Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will go to item next. Representative McDonald moves House File 2017. I see no amendments at this time. Representative McDonald, if you could please, excuse me, present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, Mr. Chair, when I had the Delano folks in front of me, you didn't have the opportunity to impress them with your knowledge of what our mascot is for school.
The Tigers.
Excellent.
Is it?
Very good. Yes, the Delano Tigers. Well done. Are you surprised?
Tigers or Cardinals, you got a pretty good shot. Is it really the Delano Tigers?
Well, certainly. You knew that.
Do I have a hat?
I'll get you one.
Okay, I'll pay for it first.
All right, perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank
Oh
you.
yeah, you're not lobbying.
Under
You can just
$5.
give me one.
Under $5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not lobbying anything other than this bill right now. So, members, how many of you have teenagers who download iTunes music? Raise your hand. All right. And adults. What else? How many here have little kids that are addicted to Minecraft? Yeah, and they download everything. And they have to, hey, for $5.99 they can buy this such and such a thing.
Representative McDonald, I don't understand a thing you just said.
You'd like Minecraft, Mr. Chairman.
I would?
Yeah. You're a smart man. It's for smart kids.
Okay.
So, well, in front of you is a bill that will repeal a tax, a digital download tax that was imposed last year. And I'm not doing this just to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to undo what you did. But this is a digital download is not a tangible item that you exchange. It's not a relationship between a customer and a business that exchange something tangible, a CD, a disc, a book, a game, and so on and so forth. This is a service, if you will. And I don't think you can argue that it's not a service when you down something electronically. The state has always had a history of not taxing a service. So therefore, I present you a bill that would repeal this tax because it is a non-tangible service from person, customer, to business. So with me today is a guest of mine who's going to testify. He's an expert in the field. And Steve, who is, as you see, from Washington, D.C., but he is from Bismarck, North Dakota originally, and spent some time here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, when he was going to law school. He's going to give just a little of expert testimony on digital download and the tax and the implications of that tax. So, Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Bismarck, how far is that from Jamestown?
About 100 miles.
You know what the Jamestown University mascot is?
I don't, but my father graduated from Jamestown, so I should know that.
The Jimmies.
I thought it's the frackers, not the frackers.
Now, just I have to get something clarified here. Mr. Michael, this repeals, this doesn't repeal the fourth tier, does it?
Oral amendment?
No, okay. For the record, that was a no. Okay, welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please, sir.
My name is Steve Kranz. I'm a lawyer with McDermott, Will & Emery, a law firm in their D.C. office, and I practice in their state and local tax group. I'm a specialist, as Representative McDonald said, in taxation of digital content and digital services, and I've worked on this issue for many, many years. Earlier in my career, served as the president of the Business Advisory Council to the Streamlined Sales Tax Governing Board, where some of the definitions that are included in this repeal legislation or exemption legislation were developed, and sat there as a representative of the business community as they were developed and worked on them. There are really just a couple of quick points that I'd like to make for you, and if you've got any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. One, obviously, this has a positive impact on Minnesota consumers. I think more important from where I sit is its impact on Minnesota business and the business climate here for high-tech companies. Even as recognized in the revenue analysis done in support or as part of this legislation, the revenue analysis recognizes that between 10 and 70% of the businesses that sell this type of content that would be covered by the bill are outside of the state. So the fact that there is a sales tax on the books in Minnesota applying to these transactions, what it really means is you can only collect that sales tax when those items are sold by a Minnesota company to a Minnesota consumer, and you're imposing that burden on your Minnesota high-tech businesses, you cannot, because of the Constitution, impose that on out-of-state companies. Now, most of my time I spend working on the federal legislative effort to pass marketplace fairness, which is the legislation passed in the Senate last year, reintroduced in the Senate this year. It's been stuck in the House, but that's the legislation that would overturn the Quill case and solve the remote sales tax collection for the states. I'm deeply involved in that, and until that passes, no state can impose tax on the digital content and service community without hurting their in-state companies. Now, to give you a brief sense of what's going on around the country, as indicated in my written letter testimony, there are 17 other states that tax this type of content right now. 16 of them did so by a specific legislative imposition. Two of the 18 total have broad sales taxes that even apply to lawyers and accountants, if you can believe that. I say that jokingly, but the trend, and that was a trend that developed probably 8 years ago. The trend more recently has been for states to consider exemption bills like the one put forth by Representative McDonald. Just about 2 weeks ago, Idaho passed and the governor signed an exemption bill to cover much of the digital content world. Michigan and Vermont has a hearing later this week on an exemption bill to cover part of the digital content and online service world. Michigan has been moving a bill steadily through the process there. So the trend legislatively has been to undo taxes that were imposed on this world, in large part because the legislative community is recognizing the harm caused to their in-state business community, disadvantaging them over out-of-state companies that can get away with not collecting tax as a result of the Quill issue. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Krantz. First of all, is there anyone in the audience wish to testify on behalf of this bill, House File 2017? Anyone in the audience with concerns? Does the department wish to testify? No. You're reserving your right, though. Okay, very good. Questions from members? Okay, thank you very much. With that, Representative McDonald reduces.
Mr. Chair, you asked for questions, but not, long, windy speeches.
Well, I'll take speeches, too.
Okay.
Speeches are good. Chair Dabney.
I guess maybe I'll put it in the form of a question. Representative McDonald, why discriminate against Main Street retailers in Minnesota? Because that's what your bill is doing.
Representative McDonald, why do you want to discriminate against people?
Well, Mr. Chair, Representative Dabney, I do not want to discriminate against Main Street, Minnesota. I am Main Street, Minnesota. Right now, I have a little business on Main Street, Bridge Avenue, 141 Bridge Avenue, and I'm not discriminated against them or anyone.
Mr. Chair?
Well, Representative McDonald, if it's Bridge Avenue, how can it be Main Street?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Chair.
I've got a lot of them. Chair Dabney.
It's hard to best your last question, but I'm going to try. If I go to Target, do I pay sales tax if I purchase a video?
Representative McDonald.
Target being a Minnesota employer, smaller than it used to
Mr.
be.
Chair, Representative Dabney, if you purchase a VCR video, no, they don't sell them anymore.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Dabney.
Mr. Chair, someone should talk to Representative McDonald about VCRs. I don't think anybody buys them anymore, and I don't think Target sells them anymore. But a DVD, you pay sales tax on it.
Yes, you do,
Representative McDonald.
Mr. Chair.
If I download one from Netflix, why should we encourage people to download videos from Netflix rather than purchase them from Target? We're biasing the tax code through your bill against a major Minnesota employer and their sales.
Representative McDonald.
Mr. Chair, Representative, in order to purchase an item at a store, a bricks and mortar, you have to get in a vehicle, take the bus, take the train, use the public infrastructure that the taxpayers paid for, and therefore, there should be a tax there because you're using the infrastructure necessary to get you to the store. In downloading a digital item, there's no item, there's no tangible item. It's invisible. Why are you taxing something that's invisible, that costs no strain on infrastructure for police, fire, protection, and harm? So therefore, many in my district would argue that that is not a usable or a fair tax, to tax something that's invisible. But a product that you tangibly hold, that have to physically drive to and get to use the infrastructure, yes, it is necessary, I suppose, to have a tax to pay for that important services.
Mr.
Chair Dabney.
I can see this computer, maybe you can't, Representative McDonald, but I'm sitting here using things that you tell me are invisible. It's not an argument of faith that I can work with programs that I can't see. I can't see the engine of the car while I'm driving it either, but it's still there. And if I get it, I think that we should have a tax code that doesn't pick winners and losers, and that in fact protects Main Street, Minnesota. Incenting people through the tax code to buy from Netflix rather than to buy from Target or whatever Walmart, whatever Main Street retailer you have, I think is poor tax policy and also doesn't recognize the direction of where purchases are going in Minnesota and the significant public investments in those. We're putting, as a state, significant money into expanding broadband. That's state money, state infrastructure that we get to use as Minnesotans to download the latest Taylor Swift song. And that tax money needs to be replenished just as the tax money for roads and bridges needs to be replenished, because it's all getting used and it all will need upgrades and maintenance and things like that. I'm going to stand with Minnesota retailers on this one and in opposition to your bill. Thank you.
Mr. Krantz. Thank you, Chair Dabney. Mr. Krantz.
So I think you raise an interesting question. I want to just offer a way to think about that question, because, you know, as somebody who's spent most of my career working to get the Quill case overturned and trying to make certain that there is a level playing field across the country for Main Street and online retailers, I think a lot about this. And the reality is that Main Street retailers selling books, competing with an online retailer selling a book, are at a competitive disadvantage. And there's nothing Minnesota can do to fix that. It is the nature of our constitutional limitations on the states, and it is the reason why there has been such a focus on getting Congress to step in and fix the Quill problem. I think what Representative Dabney's bill does is say, I'm sorry, yes.
It was his bill that put the tax on.
What Representative McDonald's bill is an attempt to say, let's not allow that same type of discrimination to punish Minnesota businesses in the high-tech space. Because we can't fix the Quill problem unless Congress steps in, we shouldn't impose this sales tax burden on Minnesota vendors, and it isn't only imposed on Minnesota vendors of digital content and services right now because of the nexus issue.
Mr. Chair.
Chair Dabney.
Just a quick response, and I think I'll say I share your frustration with the Quill decision and the inequitable taxing situation that leaves us in as a state. Amazon is now a Minnesota company. They're going to be hiring hundreds of people for a distribution center, if I recall correctly, in the Mankato area. I think it is. If Representative Considine were here, I'm sure he could tell us a lot about it. But I'm not sure that the intermediate step should be, let's bias further against Minnesota retailers by taxing their sales and not taxing the sales of digital products that we can, in fact, reach to. I pay sales tax on my Netflix account now. I pay sales tax on Amazon purchases. I believe I pay sales tax on iTunes. I'm not sure where Apple is in the state. I've long wanted to offer legislation that would apply the sales tax to any corporation that hired a lobbyist in Minnesota, but the lobbying community has encouraged me not to do that. I could extend it to, they don't have any clout. I could extend it to companies that fly in, lawyers, high-priced lawyers. I don't know. I could get creative here. But in the meantime, I don't think we should have a tax code that biases against Main Street retailers, as this does. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dabney. Representative Chair Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think most of what I was going to say was covered in Mr. Kranz's response, but, you know, members, every element of taxation that government provides and extends and does to people and does to businesses and does to transactions is a discriminatory act. And that's the way I look at this. Representative McDonald, you are removing a piece of discrimination that was initiated by this body 2 years ago. Thank you for your bill.
Questions or comments from members? With that, Representative McDonald renews his motion that House File 2017 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill. Thank you, Representative McDonald. Thank you, Mr. Kranz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.